In this video, we're going to learn about sustainability, and we'll learn how human activities can disrupt the sustainability of ecosystems. When we think of sustainability, it's a good idea to understand what happened to Easter Island so that we don't make the same mistakes. So, Easter Island was settled by a group of people from what is thought to be Polynesia, and they had an extremely advanced culture and technology for their time. And one of the things they did was build these very distinctive statues that we can see here. What happened though is they were so isolated from other islands and other settlements that they couldn't get back to anywhere else. So what happened is they overexploited their resources. They chopped down the trees that were on the island and used them for resources and for tools for agriculture and so on, so that eventually there were no trees to build boats to leave the island. And through a variety of circumstances, they ran out of resources. And when they were discovered by European settlers many, many years later, they were living in some dire straits. So we can learn from their example that we need to make sure that we are restoring our resources and replacing and replenishing what we take from the earth so that we don't run out of resources. It would be a good idea to review some of the terms that may be familiar to us already, but ecology is the study of the relationship between living things and the environment. So we interact with the environment every day, whether or not we pay attention to it. And all living things do that. And they interact with one another, and they also interact with the surroundings. An ecosystem is the collection of abiotic and biotic components in an area. So an example of an ecosystem would be a forest, a pond, and even human beings are considered ecosystems because we provide a dwelling place for a whole multitude of bacteria and other small organisms that we can't even see, but we rely on and they rely on us. So how do we know if an ecosystem is sustainable? Well, sustain has two meanings. One of them is to endure, and one of them is to support. So we can say that a sustainable ecosystem can support many different species over time. Biotic characteristics are all the living things found in an ecosystem, and additionally how they interact with one another. So if you see in this picture, we have some plants, we have some insects, we have some mammals and so on. They're all interacting with one another, sometimes positively, and sometimes the interaction might be positive for one organism but negative for another. So one type of interaction between species would be competition. So that's when organisms are fighting over a resource that's in limited supply. So it could be, fighting over food or competing for water source or competing for a habitat. And what will happen is the one that is most successful will increase in the population, and the one that is less successful will start to decline. So an example could be, gazelles and zebras both competing for a water source, and the one that can get to the water first and replenish their need for water are going to survive. The other ones may not. Predation is when one organism, the predator, actively kills and feeds on another, the prey. So the example I've drawn here would be a lion hunting a zebra. Parasitism is when you have a parasite. So an organism lives in or on another organism, and they feed off of the organism, but they don't kill it. So some examples of parasites that we're mindful of might be like tapeworms. Our animals, our pets can get tapeworms and can even pass them on to us, and we can get them from meat that's not properly prepared. Also, ticks and fleas are all examples of parasites that can feed off of our blood and sometimes even pass other diseases like Lyme disease in the case of ticks, or malaria in the case of mosquitoes. Now, symbiosis is a relationship where organisms from different species live together and they help each other out. So they help benefit each other. So an example might be a clownfish living in an anemone. The clownfish uses the anemone because it has stinging tentacles as shelter. The clownfish isn't affected by these tentacles. And when the clownfish comes back and brings food and eats the food, bits of it will drop into the anemone and provide food to the anemone. So they're both benefiting. Another example would be sharks and remora fish. So remora fish will hitch a ride on a shark and be transported from place to place. And they'll also eat some of the debris or parasites on the shark. So the shark is getting the benefit of getting rid of some of its parasites, and the remora fish are getting a ride from one place to another. Now, abiotic characteristics are non-living factors that impact living things. So the examples could be the water quality, the soil and what type of soil is in the area, the temperature in the area, the minerals that are in the soil, the light, how much light is being contributed to that part of the ecosystem, the weather events, the rocks. Anything that's non-living are abiotic characteristics.